we love food, colored green, bell peppers and long string beans, pickles, celery, cucumbers too. All these foods are good for you.
Welcome to Storytime Cooks, where we learn about food through books. Today we're going to be reading Flat Stanley and the Missing Pumpkins. This story is by Lori Haskin Howren, pictures by Mackie Pamaton, and publisher is HarperCollins. Stanley Lambchop lived with his mother, his father, and his little brother Arthur. Stanley was 4 feet tall and about a foot wide, but only a half an inch thick. He had been flat ever since a bulletin board had fallen on top of him. "Ow! Your elbow is so pointy," said Arthur. Stanley and Arthur were squashed in the back seat of the car. "Sorry," Stanley said. He folded himself into like a taco so his elbow wouldn't poke Arthur. "Better?" he asked. "Better," said Arthur. The boys were on their way to their cousin Billy's farm. "I envy you," Mrs. Lambchop said. 2 weeks of fresh air and the county fair." "I can't wait to see Billy," said Arthur. "And Aunt Sue and Uncle Bob," said Stanley. Aunt Sue was always baking pies to fatten him up. "I'm flat, not skinny," he'd tell her. But it didn't seem to matter. The Lambchops pulled up to the big red farmhouse. "Billy!" yelled Arthur. "Arthur!" yelled Billy, and they took off together. "Don't get into trouble," Mrs. Lambchop called after them. I bet some of you might have heard that somebody say that to you before. Stanley said goodbye to his parents, and Uncle Bob helped with the bags. "Ready for some chores?" Uncle Bob asked. "You bet," said Stanley. "There is a lot of work that has to be done on the farm." Stanley loved doing farm chores, and he was good at it too. He could slide his flat hands underneath the hens to collect their eggs, and they didn't mind a bit. Stanley could slip his flat body between rows to get every ear of corn. "Best picker around," said Uncle Bob. And when Uncle Bob needed to unload hay bales from his truck, Stanley made the perfect ramp. He could just lay between the truck and the ground, and they would roll the hay bales up onto the truck. Stanley's pretty talented. "You are mighty helpful, Stanley," Uncle Bob said one night at dinner. "But you are still so thin," said Aunt Sue. "Even with all my good cooking, you must eat another slice of pie." After dessert, Stanley went with Uncle Bob to fix a scarecrow in the pumpkin patch. And they grew pumpkins on their farm. "The scarecrow does a fine job scaring off birds," Uncle Bob said. "Too bad it can't scare off thieves. Someone's been taking my pumpkins." "That's awful," said Stanley, "right before the county fair." "Oh, I never show my pumpkins at the fair," Uncle Bob said. "Gosh, no, I just don't like my pumpkins disappearing. Please hand me the nails." And there's the scarecrow. Some of you might make a scarecrow this fall. Those are fun to make. Stanley passed Uncle Bob some nails, and Uncle Bob fixed the scarecrow's shoulder. "I've tried standing guard at night, but the thieves just wait until I go home," he said. Stanley looked at the scarecrow's skinny wooden arms. I bet he's getting an idea. Then he looked at his own flat arm. "Uncle Bob, I have a plan." Do you guys have any idea what Stanley might be thinking? That night, the moon lit the sky, and Stanley stood still. He had swapped places with the scarecrow, and he turned into one. He had to try really hard not to scratch. It was very challenging since his sleeves and pants were stuffed with straw, because that would be itchy. Stanley was about to give up and scratch when he saw something. 2 flashlights bobbing in the dark. "This way," a voice whispered, and the lights grew closer. Stanley held his breath. Then someone bumped right into him. "Ow, this scarecrow's elbow is so pointy," said the thief. Does that give you an idea who the thief might be? Remember when Stanley and his brother were in the car, his brother said, "Stanley, your elbow is so pointy." "Gotcha!" Stanley yelled. Then he snatched the flashlight and shone it in both thieves' faces. "What on earth?" Stanley said. It was his brother Arthur that said his elbow was pointy in the car, and his cousin Billy. "Why are you stealing pumpkins?" "It's a surprise for Uncle Bob," Arthur said. "Some surprise," said Stanley. "No, really," said Billy. "The fair's tomorrow. Dad is too shy to take his pumpkins, but I know that he could win a prize. Arthur's helping me find the good ones, and we're going to show them at the county fair." Stanley couldn't help smiling. "That really is a good surprise. How can I help?" "Well, there's one thing you can do," said Arthur. Remember, Stanley could be a ramp, so he made a ramp from the ground to the truck, and they rolled all the good pumpkins up onto the bed of the truck. Uncle Bob found Stanley the next day. "Did the thieves show up last night?" "Oh, yes," said Stanley. "Come see." "What on earth?" Uncle Bob said. The boys quickly explained the plan. "Arthur and I will handle everything. You can just watch," said Billy. "What do you say, Dad?" "Well, gosh," said Uncle Bob, "it looks like my pumpkins are going to go to the fair." That afternoon, they all celebrated Uncle Bob's first ever blue ribbon pumpkin. Uncle Bob couldn't stop grinning. "This is so exciting. Thank you, boys. I know just the thing to do with this prize-winning pumpkin," said Aunt Sue. "Make a prize-winning pumpkin pie. Stanley, you must eat another slice." So today, we're going to make a summertime pumpkin pie with this blue ribbon pumpkin. This is a really easy recipe. Most of the time, we think about pumpkin pie in the fall, around Thanksgiving time, when we would have fresh pumpkins to use. But today, we're going to use a can of pumpkin. We're going to use a container of Cool Whip, a box of pudding, and it could be sugar-free or regular pudding. We're going to put in just a little bit of milk and stir that all together with some pumpkin pie spice, and that's going to make it taste good. If you don't have pumpkin pie spice, we'll share the recipe of how you can make your own pumpkin pie spice with some ginger and cinnamon and nutmeg and allspice. Some of you might have those spices in your cabinet. If you don't have one of them, it's not a problem. Just use what you have. You can even just use cinnamon. We're going to stir that all up and put it in a graham cracker crust. And this is a great summertime pumpkin pie because you don't even have to bake it. Just make sure you store it in your refrigerator, and that would be a yummy treat to help you think about that fun blue ribbon that Stanley's uncle won at the county fair. I would encourage you to enter some things in the county fair this year. You can enter not just pumpkins, you can enter flowers and fruits and vegetables and crafts and all kinds of things. Check out our website for more information, and we will have a list of the categories and the details on what days you need to bring your entries to the fairgrounds. Come back next week as we learn about food through books at Storytime Cooks.
We love food colored green, bell peppers and long string beans, pickles, celery, cucumbers too. All these foods are good